Hello, everybody, and welcome to another day of live streaming with AP World History Modern. Today, we're going to take some time. Yesterday, with Mr. Logereau, you started going over some reviewing content that could be on your AP World History test. Reminder, this year, your AP World History test is going to be one document-based question with a total of 5 documents. And you will have 45 minutes to take the test and 5 minutes to submit your written response. If you don't have the information about the test and you'd like to learn more, go look at last Friday's YouTube video, and you can, about the first 20 minutes, you can learn more details about how the test will be given and the rubric that will be used to assess student success. If you haven't been coming here every day since the beginning of this, you might not know that I'm Chad Smith, and I'm a high school teacher who works at MacArthur High School in Irving, Texas. However, today's lesson is actually brought to you by one of my dear friends and mentors, Miss Amy Laporte Lewis, who had taught me this lesson and in order to help me become a better teacher. Miss Amy Laporte Lewis teaches high school in Atlanta, Georgia, and not only does she teach students and teachers how to teach AP World History, she's also on the AP Test Development Committee. So she's a pretty trusty person when it comes to understanding what we need to know about AP World History. Before we get into today's lesson, let's take a moment and look at our homework from yesterday. Yesterday, Mr. Logereau gave us a document and 3 questions to respond to that document. Again, while this is not the format that you'll be taking the AP World History test, it is an exceptionally useful way to practice the skills that you'll be doing on the AP World History test. So, the first question said identify one historical process in South or Southeast Asia that accounts for the religion of the Shirivijaiva. Okay, maybe I just shouldn't say that for the rest of this time. Merchant in Guangzhou as reported in the passage. And when you read the passage, you understand that the religion the question is referencing is Islam. So, how does Islam get to the Southeast Asia trade city when it was originally founded in the Middle East? Well, here's a couple of possible answers. The expansion of maritime or sea-based commerce in the Indian Ocean and South Pacific led to more Muslim merchants in the region. Another potential answer is increasing Muslim domination of the Indian Ocean trade routes and the establishment of Muslim diasporic merchant communities. That means small minority communities that are established away from the homeland or the governing people of the same ethnicity, or in this case, religion. These diasporic communities often had missionaries who were interested in spreading the religion of Islam. The establishment of Muslim states in India help explain how Muslim communities spread as far as Southeast Asia and Swahili. No, I still shouldn't say it. The increased activity of Sufi missionaries. Sufi is a branch of Islam that has an inflection of mysticism and personal attributes, as well as even at times some miracle performing. And they were popular Muslim missionaries. Okay, this will help you with the idea of providing evidence beyond the document, having outside information and using that outside information that comes from your brain and applying it to the claims you make in your DBQ. On this year's DBQ, that's worth 2 points. You get 1 point for each time you provide outside evidence. The next question said explain one aspect of the economic development of China under the Song dynasty that led to flourishing of commerce that is reflected in the passage. This time, the question doesn't require us to go back into the passage because it gives us the word flourishing. And so we already know that it's talking about the increase in the amount of commerce taking place. So here are several possible answers to this question. The first one is improvements in ship design and increased use of technology, such as the compass, help explain the growth of foreign trade. Chinese artisan manufacturing of products such as silk textiles, porcelains, ironware, lacquerware increased during the Song Dynasty, as did demand for those products in other parts of the world, which of course leads to a flourishing in commerce or an increase in trade. Chinese demand for Indian and Persian silks and manufactured products grew during the Song Dynasty, which again will lead to more trade, and encouraged the government to adopt policies that accommodated foreign merchants. As the economy of China grew, Song China grew, so did the population of cities such as Nanjing, Hangzhou, Guangzhou, and Fuzhou, which attracted foreign merchants and expanded overseas trade. Remember, as a general rule, trade builds cities. It's a reciprocal process because there's other economic activities that go along with trade. Long distance merchants need a place to stay and dock their ships or take care of their animals. They need food, they need rest. All of these are other economic activities that can help increase the growth of the city. Like the Tang Dynasty, that's the dynasty that came before the Song Dynasty and before the year 1200, the expansion in overseas trade encouraged Song government to adopt accommodating policies for foreign merchants, such as allowing them to have their own quarters and ports, and even allowing them to establish their own courts that followed traditional laws. Such policies helped expand overseas trade because it brought more foreign merchants into China. The third question is explain one way in which the author's point of view, purpose, or intended audience might have influenced his assessment of the events described in the passage. Again, this is a skill you will need to do on your AP World History test. As a matter of fact, you will be given 2 opportunities to successfully accomplish this skill. If you do this one time for one document, you will get 1 point on your AP World History test. If you do this a second time for a second document, you will get a second point on your AP World History test. So let's look at some of the ways that we can analyze this source and how it affects our understanding of the document. As a customs inspector, the author is a Chinese customs inspector. His job was to increase the revenue that the Song government received from trade. Therefore, he has personal interest in highlighting and publicizing the accommodations for foreign merchants. It's his personal interest to bring in foreign merchants so that they can increase trade. Another possible answer is that his report was likely sent to his superiors. So he could possibly be exaggerating the potential importance of the cemetery that was constructed in attracting foreign merchants to Guangzhou. Notice that this has the purpose, or the intended audience in this case. He's likely sent his report to his superiors, and then it says how it affects your understanding of the document, the possibility that he could be exaggerating. Since the purpose of the report was to publicize the building of the ceremony for foreign merchants in Guangzhou, he possibly exaggerates its future importance in luring foreign merchants to settle in Guangzhou. Notice in all 3 cases, you have, first of all, you have 2 steps, right? Doing a source analysis never comes in just 1 step. It always comes in 2 steps. You must first identify the historical context, intended audience, purpose, or point of view, and then you must explain how that thing affects the understanding of the document. Okay, let's take a minute and get into our lesson today. Today we're studying Dar al-Islam, or everything under the umbrella of Islam. We're learning about Islam from the year 1200 to the year 1450. But in order to have a firm understanding of Islam in the year 1200 to 1450, There's a few things you need to know about the religion itself. First of all, from the very beginning of the religion, when the Prophet Muhammad created it in the year 622, it has always been both a religion and a state. And the reason for this is because the core concept of the idea of Islam, the religion of Islam, is that obedience is the heart of a relationship with God. As a matter of fact, the word Muslim, or a follower of Islam, means one who submits. The entire religion is centered on obeying the words of God and the lessons of the Prophet Muhammad. Islam was uh, founded in a society made of merchants, and as a result, Islam was a religion that heavily leaned on and believed in the value of long distance trade. Islam was also founded as a society with a lesser degree of patriarchy than most societies surrounding it. As a matter of fact, the Prophet Muhammad himself was married to a woman who was previously a widow. You can think of the fact that in other societies, widows weren't considered valuable to society anymore because as women who had already been married, they had already served their purpose to society. So notice how large Islam had spread throughout the time before 1200. Before the year 1200, Islam spread all the way out from Mecca, where it started. You can see Mecca. I'm going to try and do something I've never done before right here. You can see Mecca right here. This is the beginning of Islam, and it spread from Islam out from Mecca throughout the Middle East, across North Africa. Through trade, it spread into areas of the Indian Ocean. But the Islamic State itself reached across North India, through Central Asia, the Middle East, and all the way across North Africa. And even parts of the Islamic State reached into Europe in Spain. So the Islamic State was an exceptionally large empire. So today we're going to take some time doing an activity and better understanding not just Islam, but also how to actually support a claim with evidence. But before we do so, I need you to know these 19 facts about Islam. I understand that this document is actually exceptionally hard to read and difficult to look at. So I want everyone right now to scroll down in the description of this document. And in the description of this, by the way, thank you to the 13 people who liked this video several hours before it began. I just noticed that and it made me feel very warm and fuzzy. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, scroll down into the description of this document, and you can see a box around the link that I'd like you to click. When you click that link, it'll take you to this Google Drive that is currently divided into 2 folders. Units 8 through 9, the new topic that Mr. Logereau and I had gone over previously, and review lessons, which Mr. Logereau started yesterday. When you get to the review lessons, you will see a document titled 1.2 Activity Guide. And when you pull that up, it will look exactly like this, only it'll be legible. You'll be able to read it. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to go through and read the 19 facts. Just in case you haven't had the opportunity to pull up the document, I'm going to make sure to keep track of the time in reading the 19 facts, and I'm going to flip through the 5 rows of facts so that you have enough time to read it. So take some time to read through the 19 facts. If you read through them once and I haven't moved on, read through them again. It can't hurt. Okay, go ahead. Okay, here's rows 3 and 4. All right. All right, let's take a look at row 5. All right. So hopefully you've had enough time to read all 19 facts about the Islamic, about Dar al-Islam or the Islamic Empire or everything under Islam. If you haven't, feel free to pause the video and continue reading the 19 facts and then catch up with us when you're ready. So I want to talk to you for just a minute about the idea of facts versus the idea of evidence. See, what we just read was 19 facts. But in order to turn each of those facts into a piece of evidence, we need to use them to prove a specific point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a claim. And then I'm going to give you approximately 3 minutes. And I want you to go back through your 19 facts. And I want you to circle, underline, highlight, copy and paste, write down whatever method you're using for your note taking. I want you to find what 3 facts best serve as evidence to support that claim. How can you prove the point that's being made by the claim? Let's start with a relatively easy one. Islam influenced gender roles, having an bigger impact on patriarchal practices in the caliphate than other places such as Mali. Take 3 minutes to look over your 19 facts and decide which 3 of the 19 facts best serve as evidence for this claim about Islam. All right, hopefully you've had enough time to look through the 19 facts and find 3 that best support this claim. Here are the 3 facts that can support this claim that Islam influenced gender roles, having a bigger impact on patriarchal practices in the caliphate, meaning where they excuse me, meaning where Islam was a direct state ruling over, than other places such as Mali. 1B is definitely an answer to this claim, is definitely evidence to support this claim. Many Muslim and non-Muslim women were required to veil themselves in public throughout the Middle East. Notice that, first of all, this says Muslim and non-Muslim women. And it also points out, it also says that in parts of the Middle East, which is where the caliphate was, not that they volunteered to veil themselves, but that they were required to veil themselves in public. They're making it, therefore, a patriarchal practice. Another piece of evidence to support this claim is that Muslim women in West Africa had greater public freedoms than many women in the Middle East. So West Africa, for example, Mali, a West African empire based off of sub-Saharan trade routes. And finally, 3C. A strong tradition of patriarchy in South Asian Hinduism meant that Islam had less of an impact on gender roles there. In other words, women were already in a very unfortunate position in South Asia as a result of the social placement of individuals in categories because of Hinduism. So Islam had less of an effect in that region. So here's the thing. What we've just done is, by making this, we've actually developed the beginning or the root of a paragraph that we're going to write in our DBQ. See, the whole idea of a DBQ is to make a claim. That's what your thesis is. Remember, a thesis statement is worth 1 point. And that 1 point is, can you, in the beginning or in the end of your essay, make a claim that responds to the topic of the prompt? Can you make an academic claim based off the documents? And so that comes in your thesis. And then in your body paragraphs, based off of how many claims, 1, 2, 3, you made in your first, and you made in your thesis, you should have the same number of body paragraphs. Each body paragraph supporting the claim, one claim you made in your thesis. So let's take a look at an academic paragraph. Notice that the first topic sentence is the claim. Islam influenced gender roles, having a bigger impact on patriarchal practices in the caliphate than in other places such as Mali. In that sentence, we've made a claim. It's not evidence. There's not a lot of details other than the word Mali. And so now we have to provide the details to support that claim that we've made. Many Muslim and non-Muslim women were required to veil themselves in public throughout the Middle East. That's a claim, that's evidence that supports the claim. However, Muslim women in West Africa had greater public freedoms than many women in the Middle East. And a strong tradition of patriarchy in South Asian Hinduism, meant that Islam had less impact on gender roles there. Again, now you have a paragraph. And if we did our DBQ like this, we'd be setting ourselves up to earn as many as 5 out of the 10 points. See, you have your thesis where you put all your claims, and then you draw one claim from your thesis down into a body paragraph. Start with the topic sentence that repeats the claim, one claim from your thesis, and then you can begin providing evidence. And remember, there's 5 different points that are involved with providing evidence. The first 3 are about providing evidence from the document. If you successfully provide evidence from 4 of the 5 documents, you'll earn 3 points. The second 2 are about providing evidence from your brain. If you can provide 2 pieces of evidence from your own brain, then you'll earn 2 points. Whoops, cheated. Let's take a moment and let's do it again, this time with a new claim. Dar al-Islam, while dominated by the religion of Islam, encompassed many groups of people with different religions, cultures, and languages. Take another 3 minutes to find, I believe this time there's four, to find the four best claims, the four best pieces of evidence to support this claim. Okay, hopefully you've had enough time to look through your 19, to look through your 19 facts and to come up with some possible responses. One piece of evidence to support this claim is that Islamic rulers often used the jizya, which is known as a tax, for religious minorities, although Christians and Jews were allowed to maintain their faith. A reason for this is because they also had monotheistic religion, so that Muslims considered them people of the book, or like-minded religious beliefs. Another piece of evidence is that Christians, Muslims, and Jews often lived relatively peacefully in Spain, known as Al-Andalus, under Muslim government. And finally, while Islam became the religion of the ruling class in West Africa, traditional shamanistic and animistic religious practices continued. There were four this time. Under the Delhi Sultanate, Hinduism remained the predominant faith, while the ruling class was primarily Muslim. So here's the deal. Just like before, you can turn this into an academic paragraph, which has a claim at the top and then spends the rest of the time in the paragraph devoted to proving that claim by supporting it with evidence. Let's take a little bit less time and let's find the three pieces of evidence that support this claim. Three pieces of evidence that support this claim. Okay, I've given you less time, but in the interest of moving along, I want to go over some of the possible answers here. Or not possible answers. I want to go over the pieces of evidence that support this claim. The Indian concept of zero and number system was transferred across Dar al-Islam by Muslim merchants and scholars, ultimately diffusing into Europe. Notice how they show the fact that there was knowledge and technology, and also how it spread across Islam, clearly offering evidence to support the claim. Same thing, Islamic scholars in Dar al-Islam were the most advanced in the world at the time, known for medicine, mathematics, literature, and navigation. While Europeans had largely forgotten ancient Greek philosophy and learning, Islamic scholars frequently drew on that knowledge and philosophy of the ancient Greeks, preserving ancient Greek culture and learning. So look again how Islam has been responsible for the diffusion of knowledge and new ideas. Okay, before we move on, I want to talk about one of the most common incorrect responses here. It says, due to the value placed on merchants in Islamic society, Islam facilitated the growth of various networks of exchange, such as the Indian Ocean and across the Sahara, which in turn contributed to further diffusion of Islam. This is not evidence to support this claim. This is one of the most commonly made mistakes. The problem is both this fact and this claim are discussing the idea of diffusion. However, in the claim, Islam is responsible for diffusing knowledge. And in the fact, Islam is what's being diffused. That's why it's so important to think very carefully about the claim you're making and to take the time to make sure that you're providing evidence that supports that claim. When you write a topic sentence, it needs to be the focus of the remainder of the paragraph. Take a minute and look at your remaining facts and look for 3 pieces of evidence to support this claim. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. Well, rather, some evidence to support this claim. The Abbasid Caliphate, which is the name of one of the dynasties of Islam, the Abbasid Caliphate was a theocratic empire based around the ideas of Islam. If you don't remember from learning this in your own class, a theocracy is when the religion and the state are the same, and one is completely intertwined with the other. Most of the time, the political leader and the religious leader are the same individual. If not, then one has total power over the other in one case. Many Swahili city-states, those are on the eastern coast of Africa, they existed as a result of long-distance trade routes, were ruled by sultans or viziers, which are terms for Muslim rulers. Notice, again, we're showing how Islam influenced the structure and style of government. Turkic nomadic people from Central Asia conquered large parts of South Asia and established a sultanate over the Hindu people there. All of these are pieces of evidence that support the claim that Islam influenced the structure and the style of government in different places around Afro-Eurasia. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time working on the idea of how do we provide evidence to support a claim. Remember, that is the heart of what you do in a DBQ. You make 1, 2, or even 3 significant claims responding to the prompt. After you've made your claims responding to the prompt, you then take the time to use the documents and outside information to prove that point. There are other tasks as well, such as analyzing the source or providing contextual information, but the heart of a DBQ is about making a claim and supporting it with evidence. And that's what we've spent our time practicing today. Before we move on, I just want to remind you that by the time the year 1200 hit, Islam was already a massive empire, spreading across the Middle East and North Africa, and even stretching into the northern parts of India. But throughout the 1200s, Islam began to falter and break up. And different groups such as Egypt or the Turks or in India, different groups began to break off and create their own independent Islamic empires. And in some cases, for example, what we'll learn about next week, the Mongols, in the year 1258, the Abbasid dynasty and the heart and the capital of that dynasty, Baghdad, was completely destroyed by the Mongols. But in the year 1200, when we begin studying and understanding world history, Islam was an extraordinary state. So let's take some time to continue working on understanding more about Islam, but also working on AP exam practice. For your homework tonight, I want to actually take the activity we've been doing all day long, and I want to flip it on its head. And I want to look at, instead of working to prove a claim with evidence, I'm going to give you pieces of evidence, and I want you to try to write the claim. So, looking at these pieces of evidence, what is a potential claim that you could write that all of these facts would support? 1A, ineffectual leadership and internal instability led to various groups breaking away from the Abbasid control, such as the Mamluks in Egypt. 2D, the expansion of Central Asian Turkish peoples, such as the Seljuks, led to a contraction of Abbasid borders and power. And 1C, the Mongol expansion and conquest effectively ended the rule of the Abbasid Caliphate. Here's your second group. Again, I want you to read the facts and develop the claim that all of these facts are working together to support. 5B, Sufi missionaries emphasizing a mystic or personal approach to practicing Islam were highly successful in spreading Islam throughout the Indian Ocean basin. Imperial armies as well as conquering groups of Islamic nomads from Central Asia, expanded the borders of their states, thereby expanding the extent of Dar al-Islam. And due to the value placed on merchants in Islamic society, Islam facilitated the growth of various networks of exchange, such as in the Indian Ocean and across the Sahara, which in turn contributed to the further diffusion of Islam. All right. Thank you everyone so much for watching us and participating with us today. I hope you learned a lot and got to practice important skills that you'll be using on your AP World History test. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow for your answers from Mr. Logero and to learn more and to have another opportunity to prepare and review for your AP World History test. Thank you, everybody.